20th and at 7 o'clock p.m. and I'm calling to order the regular business meeting of the Newmarket School Board. And we'd like to begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have quite a few students here. You guys, if you could lead it for us, I would appreciate it very much. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We have a very, very full crowd tonight, which is always exciting, and we're doing some recognition and some student presentations tonight, so I'd like to get to those, but before we do, I'd like to open the microphone to public comment if anyone has any.
Going once.
Nice. All right, we'll give it about 30 more seconds if no one has comments.
I'll wait the baby.
Words of wisdom for anyone. We don't often have this full a crowd, so it's sort of tempting to leave it open a little longer, but I'll let it go. But Meredith, if you could lead us in our recognition this evening. We have some students that have done some excellent things I'd like to recognize.
Sure. So our first recognition this evening is of Sam Freed. If you would come forward. So Sam was awarded third place in the documentary category of the New Hampshire History Day competition, and he also received an award from the New England Regional Branch of the National Archives for his outstanding use of primary sources. So a couple of big honors for this 9th grade student.
Great.
So we're very proud of him and wanted him to join us tonight.
Sam, could you tell us a little bit about what your film was about?
So the theme was taking a stand in history, so I wanted to go into America's infrastructure, and I knew Franklin Roosevelt had a big part in pulling America out of the Great Depression and through World War II before he died. And so I wanted to do something about him, and there was so much content, so I knew I could do some with primary sources.
Excellent. Well,
Great.
we have a small token of appreciation for
lovely.
you, Sam. We just want to say that we are always proud of our students for doing great things. So thank you for coming, and thank your parents for coming yet again. Congratulations.
And I'm not sure, Sam, is there a place where people can view your documentary? Do you know?
Yeah, it's on our history teacher's site.
So it's on Ms. Fink's site, but I think we might be able to, we'll see if we can get it uploaded to the district's YouTube site and make that link available to people so people can watch it at home.
Excellent. Congratulations again, Sam.
Thank you very much.
Next.
And our next one is Jennifer Jones.
So Jennifer Jones works in our food service department, and she has just been recognized as New Hampshire Food Service Manager of the Year.
Thank you.
You know, it's always wonderful to be able to not only recognize students, but also staff for the work that they do in our schools, because you guys are the heart and soul of it. And I know that in food service, you guys work hard to provide food for kids that might not have it otherwise. So I appreciate the hard work that you guys do, and the love and compassion that you show the students in the lunchroom, when it's not always the first thing, but thank you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about the award at all, or how that works?
Well, Linda actually wrote the nomination. We've hit a bunch of milestones this year, hit a record on breakfast. I hit 145 today, which is our highest, I think, ever for student breakfasts. And we've just kind of been able to trying to build on our numbers and money and make sure that we're fluent, and the kids understand that no hungry child can learn. So we work with the staff, work with the kids, try to let them know no matter what, you come see me and I'll feed you, and that's more important than anything else. So it's been great to have the support behind us, because it wasn't always that way, so it's awesome.
Great.
Just for perspective, 145 students participating in the breakfast program is almost 30% of our students then are receiving breakfast at the
Yes, we
elementary
used to
school.
serve about 30, 35, and we've progressively, we'd hit 60, and I'd text her, email her and go, we hit 60. So it's huge, because we're serving 300 kids for lunch and 145 kids for breakfast is big, looking at the whole state.
Yeah.
And how many shifts at lunch do you do?
I start at 10 minutes of 8, and I don't stop till 10:30.
And-
It's a continuous breakfast. I put out like a buffet. The kids know exactly what they need to get. They're very well trained on that. And then we shut it down at 10:30 because we serve our first lunch at 11:15.
And the last lunch is?
20, we end at about 20 past 1. So we have 6 lunches on top of it. So, but at any point, whether it's before school, at snack time, they're just quiet in the classroom and I can't focus, there's an opportunity to send them down and get something to eat.
And I think that's important for us to know as a board, that not all school districts do what we do, that our kids don't get hungry, and that's because of the work of our staff
Yeah.
and our administration. I think it's so important that we support our community
Definitely.
that way.
Absolutely.
It's made a huge difference.
Is that at both schools?
They have to do it differently at the high school because of the way the classes, the block scheduling, but they have 2 carts in the hallway
Okay.
at the high school. When the kids are at advisory, they can go out, same thing, lots of options, breakfast sandwiches, bagels, cereal, you name it, and they have to take, the required, well, most of them take the required reimbursable breakfast. When we talk numbers, that's a whole reimbursable breakfast, which includes a fruit. So it's done a little differently, but they still have the same option. And they can always do the same thing, when they have a break or whatever, if there's a problem, go see Cindy. She's the same way. We kind of adopt these kids. So, if we see someone who's hungry, who's having a hard time or whatever, we try to make sure they know that they can always go in and get something.
Thank you so
Yep.
much.
No problem,
So
thank you.
is participation at the elementary school gone up just because more and more kids are getting used to it? I mean, why?
I think so. We offer a lot of variety. Special hot item every single day. We talk to the kids and let them know, that it's an option. They can come in. We talk to the parents when they come in to put money in. We have a Twitter account. We have a website for food service. We talk to the teachers. I mean, we really all interact together, so the teachers know. Or if we see a kid who might talk to the guidance counselor, hey, let them know they can come down if they haven't had breakfast. There's no need to skip. And there's a lot of situations where a kid's on a med and they don't want to eat first thing in the morning, they want to eat later, so snack time's the perfect time. So it's just more communication, just everyone being on the same page.
Is this free to the students?
Nope, there's a charge for breakfast, and then obviously we have free and reduced. So it depends on, what they qualify for.
So anybody
But-
that needs food will get it?
Exactly. Anyone who comes in, says they haven't eaten, gets a reimbursable breakfast. They get to pick their 3 items, and no one knows who's what. It's
Yep.
protected.
Overall, again, it's about 30% participation in breakfast, but it's about 60% participation in the lunch program at the elementary school.
Yes.
So those are really great numbers
Yeah.
statewide. That means we have really high participation up. So that means of all of our students in the elementary school, 60% of them are typically getting lunch through our food service program.
And without it, in another school, they may not?
Well, they could in another school, but participation numbers are lower in a lot of our surrounding districts and comparative districts. So that means our service is good, the quality of
Yep.
food is good, kids feel they have time to eat, they've got good choices that they can make. It also speaks to the fact that we're keeping our costs as affordable as we can for families.
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of factors, but it also is certainly a tribute to our staff who are the face.
Try to
that
make
kids
sure
see
everyone's
every day.
covered. I do the staff thing on the side as well to make sure they have options. I do a grab and go for staff. I do salads and hot coffee and iced coffee and you name it. So basically, if you need anything, you come to the kitchen.
But that care that you're talking about for the staff and the students is the thing that sets us apart. And I thank you for that. And Linda, I thank you for that as well, too. I think people know that they can have good options and will be cared for. And
Yeah.
that's very important to us. So
Yeah,
thank
definitely.
you. We
Thank
have a small
you.
token for you
Thank
as
you.
well.
But Linda, what about these roles that I hear often? Who made the roles and how do we bring them back?
Do I visit the school?
I know.
What happened was, we used to make rolls with all white,
Oh, we're not allowed to do that anymore.
and now it has to be whole wheat flour, so they're not as good.
So that's really
All right.
why the traditional white roll was what we used to have before the Healthy Hunger Kids Act went through, and everything had to go to whole grain. So your pizza crust, everything is whole grain.
Well, that's
So
just a
the
shame.
yes,
It's not as good? It doesn't taste as good?
it's
heavier.
it's different. White flour is just
People talk about these rolls, Al. Like, I forget the woman's name, but people used to order them. Everybody loved these rolls, and I've never had one, so I'm like, when are they coming back?
Every once in a while, somebody forgets to order wheat flour. Things happen.
And white
Or
shows
it
up.
doesn't come on the truck and it's white flour instead of wheat flour. I'll call you.
Okay.
I will add too, one thing that we are working on is trying to figure out how we can offer some sort of summer feeding program.
Good.
Oh.
Right now, we're working on ways we might be able to offset the labor costs and are looking at some private funding options for that. So we'll certainly
nice.
keep you updated on that, but it would be really exciting to be able to offer food to children and families in the summer who might otherwise lack access to a good meal in the course of a day. And we're also working with 68 Hours of Hunger partners with our food service program to make sure that families who may need food over the weekend have access to that, and it goes home with them. And vacations coming up are a critical time for families
And
as well.
from, I think what I just read today is they're serving 30 families in town, 68.
A lot of them are at the elementary school. I know with Melody, a lot of them are
Primarily there.
Yeah.
She has a really good program, so when anybody applies for free and reduced, I automatically send the 68 Hours of Hunger packet to them also, so that they know that this is out there. She does a really phenomenal job and could use all the help she could get.
Great program.
Yeah.
Linda, I appreciate your proactivity on that also, bringing that to us last year in terms of how can we plan for this summer for kids that deal with food insecurity.
Right, and, we've been working on it, and I have some good support, so this year, so, we're looking at different options. Things changed, the census changed in Newmarket, so it made it a little different as to what we're trying to do than what we were going to do last year, so.
Thank you, though.
We'll get it off the ground.
One thing, congratulations. Now, with the board's permission, I'd like to modify the agenda a little bit. We have several people from the 5th grade here to talk about Enterprise City, I feel like, and I'd like to, we forgot one more thing. I skipped something.
You're on the right track.
Yeah.
So this one will be a little shorter, unfortunately, because members of the boys basketball team are also very busy students, athletes, and employees at this time of year. So the only representative is their coach, our athletic director, Jamie Hayes, who's going to tell us a little bit about the Sportsmanship Award.
Jamie, come on up, and I apologize for my omission.
That's okay. So our boys basketball team won the Sportsmanship Award for Division IV basketball this year, which is voted on by the opposing coaches and teams. And it's really a community award. It's based on school climate, it's based on spectators, it's based on coaches, and it's based on players. So after you're evaluated on every game you play, and after the game, you get rated on either meets expectations, exceeds expectations, or below expectations. And we had the highest rating for the winter season. And as well as the girls were the second highest. So I think that's a great thing for our community and says a lot about our community, not just our teams, but our, because we're rated on spectators and the whole climate and everything. So it's not just a team award, it's a community award as far as I'm concerned.
I think that's important to look at the coaching staff as well as the spectators because they can impact things that happen on the court.
Yes,
So
definitely.
I agree that it's a community award, and I thank you for being a role model and the coaches being a role model for the students to have good citizenship and sportsmanship with each other and with the opposing teams. It's a valuable resource that they'll use whether they play basketball beyond high school or not.
Exactly, and most of them will not. So we're really big on teaching life lessons and having them learn through those experiences. So,
Excellent.
thank you.
Thank you for coming. Now we will move to the Enterprise City presentation with the 5th graders and the 5th grade staff from Newmarket Elementary School. You guys can come on up or do what you'd like.
And I don't know if, all right, it looks like a couple of their teachers are coming forward. I didn't know if Mr. Pine was coming forward, but the whole team's here.
That's great. That's crazy.
So excited about getting to 5th grade.
All right, well, thank you very much for inviting us to come tonight. I'm Shana Thorell. I'm one of the 5th grade teachers. And we thought the best way to give you a true perspective of what Enterprise City looks like as far as the preparation process and the what the day is like there, we thought the best way to do that was to bring some of the children who went through the process themselves. So we have brought Acadia, Allison, Katie, Orion, and Alex to tell you a little bit about their day at Enterprise City. Allison, you're up first.
Every year, the Newmarket Elementary School's 5th graders take a field trip to Enterprise City in Dover, New Hampshire. The 5th grade has been participating in this field trip for 12 years, and every year it proves to be one of the highlights of the 5th grade curriculum. We are able to go on this field trip year after year because of an annual donation by the Newmarket Elementary School PTA. We are also able to go on this field trip because of the parents who volunteer to help in the city during our field trip. Thank you to the NES PTA and those parents who joined us this year. Enterprise City is an opportunity for 5th graders to learn about economics in a hands-on way. This unit runs about for 6 weeks-ish and involves preparation and planning for the field trip itself. On the day of the trip, 5th graders have the opportunity to run the city by themselves. We get to be adults for a day. The city is made up of 13 different businesses, and which each have specific jobs and products to offer and sell throughout the day to the citizens of the city. At the end of the day, a business is successful if they pay off their business loan to the bank. In this presentation, we're going to tell you about a different part of the city unit, preparation, interviews, planning our businesses, working in the city, and being a citizen of the city.
Thank you, Allison.
Hello, my name is Orion. When we first learned about the Enterprise City field trip, we got preparing right away. The first activity was making informational posters for businesses. That activity really helped to get us knowing about the businesses at Enterprise City. We all had a partner to work on a job poster with. Our teacher picked 2 people that were raising their hands to do a certain business poster they wanted. Some people even got to do 2. On the posters we included what products the business sells, why you might want to join the business, the jobs needed for the business, and the type of the business, of course. The next preparing activity we did was the camping trip activity. This helped us learn about wants and needs. In small groups, we made a list of items we would bring on a camping trip. But what we didn't know was we were going to cross a lot of things off that list. When our teacher made some reasonable variables, like how far into the woods we would go with no vehicle, so we'd have to carry everything. Now that made us think. By the time we were done, everybody had more than half the things crossed off their original list. This activity really helped us learn the difference between wants and needs. No, the activity after that was really fun. It was the paper chain activity. That taught us teamwork and division of labor. In groups, we were given 20 minutes to make the longest paper chain of all the other groups in the class. The process was draw the lines, cut the strips, and link them together. But the strips had to be 6 inches long and 1 inch wide. That was challenging but fun. Our group had a great strategy of dividing up jobs. Then we did a shopping activity to help us practice writing checks. The teacher was generous enough to bring in things for us to buy. We could even buy homework coupons and contribute to an extra recess fund. For everything we bought, we had to write a check and subtract that amount from our balance. This really prepared us for the check writing experience at Enterprise City. These were just a few of the activities we did to prepare for the trip. We were just scratching the surface of what was in store for us.
Good job, Ryan.
I'm going to tell you about the interview process that all 5th graders went through to get hired for their job. Before the interviews occurred, elections were held to fill the positions of mayor and judge. Anyone who was interested in being mayor or judge was asked to create an election poster and write a speech. On election day, those running read their speech to the each of their classes, sharing why they were the best candidate for that position. After the speeches, the students voted for one judge and one mayor. The votes from each class were added up to identify the elected officials. I think the election process was very fair. I'm new to this school this year, and I didn't expect anyone to actually vote for me, but it turned out much differently when I was elected for judge of Enterprise City. Before the interviews, each of us filled out a job application and resume. We had to think of our strengths and interests, work experience, think of 2 personal references, and create a top 5 job list. Interviewers included staff from across the district who found time in their day to interview us. Many of the interviewers were familiar to us, which helped make the process comfortable and less nerve-wracking. The interviews were about 5 minutes long and included questions about our achievements and interests and why we would be a good fit for our job choices.
Good
job. After we found out about our jobs, we broke into mixed groups. Mixed groups is when employees from each of the businesses met together to come up with a business name and a logo and slogan for their business. They also had to write advertisements for the radio, newspaper, and the webpage. The accountants used this time to fill out forms for people's salary. Other paperwork also had to be filled out during mixed groups. Mixed groups took place in the 5th grade classrooms. There, employees would learn more about their jobs and get to know who they would be working with in their day at Enterprise City. Mixed groups took place for 3 days in a row for an hour each day. The groups met at 3 different times of the school day so that we weren't missing out on the same learning block each time. In conclusion, mixed groups is a fun and friendly way to get to know who you are working with, prepare for a big day at Enterprise City, and get to know your job.
I'm going to talk about working in the city. And some parts of working in a business throughout the day was very stressful. Being the mayor was really fun, but there was always something to do. Within the city businesses, some people were creating and building something, where others were on the computer working through the financial portion of the day, whereas others were talking and working with customers. However, working in the city hall was a little different. Some people, like the police officers, were walking around the city to make sure everyone was being safe and following the rules, and some people, like Katie, were sitting and talking to people about laws and stuff. Everyone was doing the job and responsibilities that they were supposed to do. In this city hall as mayor, some of my jobs to work on included making announcements on the radio, writing thank you notes for volunteers, and filling in anyone within the city hall that was on their break. Overall, I think working all day was fun, but very stressful.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm going to share the perspective of being a citizen at Enterprise City. How breaks worked at Enterprise City was each person in the business would get a certain break. The different breaks were red break, green break, and blue break. The break I had was blue break. The owner and accountant would have separate breaks, so when the accountant was on break, the owner would fill in, and when the owner was on break, the accountant would fill in. After your first break, your next break was lunch break. The lunch breaks would be in the same order as your regular breaks, except that you would eat lunch. Before I did anything on my break, I went to the bank. At the bank, I deposited my check. When I deposited my check, I got $7 in cash to spend. When you bought things from businesses on your first break, you'd have to use check or cash. On your second break, we could use a debit card instead of checks. On my second break, instead of going to the bank and depositing my check was direct deposited straight into the bank. On my breaks, I went to the snack shop to eat lunch with my friends. After I ate lunch, I went to the wellness center and got a stress ball. I also got lemonade from the snack shop. There were games that you could play at the sports shop, like basketball, where you would shoot baskets from behind a line of tape and see how many baskets you could make out of 3 tries. The other games you could play was mini golf. In mini golf, you'd try to hit the ball in the hole in a small piece of turf. Another thing you could do on your break was go to the DJ and choose a song or make a shout-out to your friends. This was just a piece of my Enterprise City experience.
Thank you guys very much. Spirit of full disclosure, I will say as a fifth grade mom, I saw the process of this program taking place in homework, and it was amazing to see them ramp up and all these different steps that the kids have talked about. So thank you to the teachers for allowing them to be a part of this. It was a far-reaching assignment on a lot of levels in terms of what economics really is, what is really a want versus what is really a need in this world, and things of that nature. So thank you for that. Kids, thank you for coming. We are going to take a brief break and come out and thank you all personally for coming out.
Before we leave, I just want to thank the parents and the teachers. These are fifth grade students, children who just stood up and spoke publicly.
I think it's their first time on TV for most of them.
I mean, that's pretty, you guys did such a good job.
But not their last.
That was amazing. You should all be very proud of yourselves.
Yes, they should. All right, come on out.
That's crazy.
We will
Are we
proceed.
back? I'm sure it was not.
All right.
Feel free to have a seat.
Keep that on. Show the empty room.
We will resume the meeting after that wonderful time with all of our visitors. It's been a
Everybody
great.
leave.
The number guys is here.
Oh.
That's all.
And we will, our student representative to the board, Julie, is not here tonight. She's an excused absence, so Meredith has some dates and to talk to you about that.
I have her report, which
Perfect.
she submitted to me in advance.
Thank
to
you,
make sure
Julia.
in her absence we had the information. So first on her list is that April vacation will be the 24th through the 28th next week. At the junior senior high, softball's record is 2-2. Their next game is tomorrow, April 21st, away against Farmington. Baseball is 2-1, and their next game is tomorrow, also away at Farmington. Track, at the last meet, the girls won the entire meet. They had the most points, in other words, from winning events, and their next meet is Tuesday, May 2nd at Sanborn. Spring fling dance, at the high school tomorrow night from 7 to 10. Third quarter grades come out tomorrow. just in time for vacation. Tomorrow is also Wellness Day at the junior senior high, so students will be attending a variety of seminars. I think there's a karate or judo maybe demonstration. I think there's mountain biking, hiking, yoga, just some different healthy lifestyle activities, and the day finishes up with an all-school assembly. And also in her note is that the Spring Talent Night will be May 5th at 7 p.m.
Meredith, I wanted to say also that there's been some notices going to the parents of the elementary school for requesting for people to join the PTA and serve as officers. You know, as the kids said with Enterprise City, the Newmarket Elementary School PTA is a wonderful partner of ours. So if people are looking for a way to volunteer, that's a great way to do it. There are forms in the main office to nominate yourself or someone else, and the vote will take place on the 3rd, on next Wednesday. No, 2 Wednesdays, on the 3rd at 6:30. Meredith, would you like to proceed with your report?
Sure. Lest I forget, as could easily happen after a presentation like that from students, May 16th at 6:30 at the junior senior high, we're showing the film Screenagers. So if you haven't had the opportunity to see that, I would highly recommend it. Students will have the opportunity to see it during the day, and there will be a panel discussion after the film, but just an opportunity to talk about the impact of technology on the lives of adolescents. Something we all grapple with, and interesting opportunity to hear some data, hear some of the research, hear some people's direct experiences, and then have a conversation with folks in your community.
And what's the title?
Screenagers.
And it's at 6:30?
6:30, May 16th.
And it's at the high school?
It is, at the junior senior high. A couple things that I neglected to mention, I think, at our last meeting. One of them was that we had Read Across America Day. Again, just, started with honoring the work of Dr. Seuss, but usually involves just a variety of different people reading to kids, encouraging kids to bring books, share books, guest readers. It's a great day, and again, it's a national event, so great enthusiasm and participation here in Newmarket. Newmarket also got to do some maple sugaring at the elementary school back, while it was cold enough to do that, but a great learning opportunity. I want to thank Sean Pine and Laura Bascom for their help in coordinating that, but again, just some great opportunities to understand what happens in New Hampshire's economy. Jump Rope for Heart was held earlier this week at the elementary school. I don't know the total number of dollars raised, but it's significant.
This morning they were counting.
Okay, still being counted. Stay tuned. But they're probably still counting, actually. It is significant, and we have huge participation, and again, just exciting to see that much community involvement and spirit. Jump Rope for Heart is a fundraiser for the American Heart Association, and a lot of our kids go to great lengths to show up, and they all raise at least a minimum amount of money to contribute back. So an opportunity to learn about giving back also at a young age. What else is on my list? This summer, we're going to be offering an EdTech boot camp, an opportunity for teachers to work towards Google certification. So that will be open not only to teachers in our district, but to teachers in the region. So that's exciting for us to play host to that project. And we use Google Apps and Google Classroom and Google Mail, Google Sheets, all of it. So the Google Suite is important for us, and the more we can sort of familiarize folks with that, give them the chance to earn some professional development credit, is a win-win. So we are excited about that. What else? We have done some work internally to look at our self-harm prevention protocol. Adolescent suicide is a topic of concern in every community in this country. We are not unique in that, but we have a protocol that if a student is exhibiting signs that are worrying for us as staff or for students, and someone brings that to our attention, we have a whole protocol that we go through that includes obviously parental notification and activating some support services. So we've revamped that protocol. We've updated a informational brochure for parents that provides links to some local resources as well. And I will stop there. I did have two other things. Actually, I have two other things on my list that are part of my report. One of those is the Director of Facilities update. So the interview committee met this week, wrapped up interviews this week. It's already Thursday. Yeah, wrapped up interviews this week. We are in negotiations with finalists at this point, and we'll hopefully have an update for you at the May meeting. That again, that's a council hire, but we would finalize the MOU at that point. And we'll talk a little bit more about the building project as we go along. We've got some financial pieces that we want to talk with you about tonight. I will say that I had a call Monday or Friday from Ann Getchell at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, letting us know that they were notified last Thursday that there would be no funds available this period. So that said, they did compliment us on our application. Even though they had nothing to offer us, we'd done good work. So that work at least was good preparation for the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank application, which was finalized and submitted. And so we'll talk more about all of that moving forward. The building committee we'll discuss as we move into the meeting, but we hope to have a first meeting of that group on the 3rd of May.
Going along those lines, Meredith, as we know, March 14th, the citizens of Newmarket authorized us to get a bond for the additions and renovations at both the schools in our district. And as a result, we are now charged as a school board to determine the best financing option for that bond. And in that, tonight we have Bill Foley with us. And Bill, if you could come up and share with us what you found so far. Bill is a financial consultant to us that we've hired to help us navigate these waters.
Sure.
So thank you.
Good evening, and thank you. Yeah, I've been working with cities and towns around New England primarily for about 25 years and financing various projects. Work with quite a few New Hampshire communities as well. Our office is in New England here, are based in Providence and Boston. The company's based in Philadelphia. It was founded in 1975. So I had been contacted by Lisa and Meredith, and we had some discussions about financing options and which would be the best way to go. And we all agree that the bond bank offers a lot of advantages for the district, that it could be most beneficial for the district for a number of reasons. So tonight I wanted to talk to you a little bit about sort of the market update, what's going on with interest rates and what the expectation is for interest rates, and then talk a little bit more specifically some of the thoughts we had in terms of the financing approach the district should consider for its bond issue. And as I get into it, one of the unique characteristics of this financing is that the construction timetable is fairly long. It's a 2-3 year timetable, which kind of influences the type of financing recommendations we would put in place here. Typically, bond issues, proceeds are either spent within the first year or in some cases reimbursing funds that are expended up front. So with this aspect, the money is not going to be laid out for quite a while. That did influence some of our recommendations. So I know there's a brief presentation. I'll go through it, and please feel free to ask questions as I go through it. Again, just to start off market conditions, just a couple of slides. Back in March, last March, the Federal Reserve raised its benchmark interest rate for the second time in 3 months. And actually, counterintuitively, the bond market was very happy with that. The interest rates fell for 10 consecutive days after that. It gave investors a sense of certainty that they knew where the direction the Fed was going, and actually it was a big relief. And since then, rates have fallen even much more so for several other reasons. One is sort of the economic news is continuing to point to a soft economy where inflation is not as rampant as what some people would expect. There was some reports issued last Friday that the CPI numbers were well below expectations. There's also concerns about the domestic agenda in terms of tax reform and other issues that might not get people excited. A lot of people were putting money into the stock market expecting tax reform to take place sometime in 2017. Now there's some doubts for that, so people are now repositioning their portfolios and putting it back into bonds and less into equities. I know at the end of December, all of our 401ks and IRAs look great because we had a really big rally right after the election, but that's sort of starting to get deflated a little bit. And obviously overseas, there's great concerns going on. So whenever there's any unease in the foreign policy policy sense, that's what they call a flight to quality. Investors put their money in bonds or treasuries because they're more liquid if they sense there's going to be some uncertainty overseas. And lastly, one of the other reasons why rates have been coming down is that the amount of debt being issued by cities and towns around the country in 2017 is down remarkably from 2016. It's through March. When you compare March of 17 to March of 16, it's 30% reduction. So a lower supply of bonds means that obviously the interest rates go down because the bond prices go up, and that's just bond math. So there's still strong demand with less supply that just drives the interest rates down. Just to give you some specific on the next page, some specific indicators, there's a couple of benchmarks. I know we're all familiar with the Dow Jones and the New York Stock Exchange. The bond market has a couple of indexes that we all use to kind of gauge where the interest rates are. One is the bond buyer index, which is a illustration of a 20-year bond in the market that's rated AA. At the end of last week, that rate was 3.77. That's just indicative. It has nothing to do with the district here or any of the borrowing you're doing, but it's just sort of a representative rate. Since 1980, that index has averaged over 6%. So just to kind of give you in historic terms where we are, we're still in very good interest rate territory. And really, it's only been lower than 7% of the time since 1980. So despite a bump in rates over the last year, when you look back, rates are still very, very low, very favorably low. Another indicator that we also look at is this rate called the AAA MMMD rate, which is the municipal market data. That's just another index that we use. If you look at the 30-year one, because I know it's comparable to what the district, this would be for a community that's rated AAA, top of the food chain in terms of the highest credit rating. At the last week, that rate was 2.91, and it's down 34 basis points since March. So you can see there's been a big influx, big shift in the market where interest rates are again very favorable for cities and towns. We worked with Rochester, New Hampshire 2 weeks ago on a 20-year bond. They got a 285. They're rated AA. Week before that was Bedford, New Hampshire, 10-year bond. They're rated AAA. It was a 1.98. So it's really just very fortunate that they happen to be in a favorable market. So the story is interest rates were very, very favorable, and I think that's beneficial for the district as it embarks its financing plan. The next couple of slides, just talk a little bit about how we come up with the timing and the structuring of the bonds. Lisa had provided me the cash flow, and this cash flow, it's on slide 6, just really represents the construction aspects of the project and not the soft costs or some of the preliminary costs and contingency that goes into the project. So as you can see, a bulk of the construction takes place in 2018. Obviously, there's other costs before that aren't on this list, but we try to gauge, when we look at a project that starts in May of 18 and really, according to the most recent cash flow requirements, doesn't conclude until February 2020, that's quite a long construction timetable. And I've been doing this long enough, and every single project I've been involved with has a delay that you don't anticipate. I can't remember any project that actually said it was going to end when the architects and the designers first say it's going to end. So using this data, we try to peg a point in time where 50% of the construction projects are going to be proceeds are going to be expended, and according to this, that gets us to about March of 2019. So what we had done on the next page on slide 7 is recommend to Lisa and Meredith right now, and obviously we're still subject to change because I know there's still a couple of weeks before you make a decision with the bond bank, is to issue approximately $20 million in June to cover your cash flow requirements through March of 2019. This really will enable the district to secure the financing that I described. Ken?
Going back to 6 for a minute.
Yep.
The way it's identified here is cumulative spending, so it's hard to see the flow.
Oh, right, yeah.
So
yeah.
Where is it loaded? It looks like it's very, very even.
Yeah, I have that chart somewhere. It's back on my computer, but I should have had it segregated out. I don't know if you
have that. It is fairly even from the construction management company from our.
That's surprising to me that it would be that way. I mean, it's a couple $1 million.
Yeah, I think I saw about $1.7 million a month.
$1.7 million a month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
just,
it's what I say, I guess, the back of the envelope, they haven't, put it all out. They
Right,
don't
we-
have the planning, so we had to kind of come
So
up with a
it's just-
cash
I
flow
gotcha.
that's conservative, not too aggressive that, we might imply something that won't be. So,
my guess is it
construction
could be very
manager.
front-loaded. This construction project could be very front-loaded.
Yeah, the cash flow that I saw sort of an even flow of expenditures. Again, I'm not familiar with the construction manager, but
Yeah.
I think until a lot of contracts are signed and contracts are signed and bid out, it's kind of difficult to say.
Yeah. I don't
Oh,
recall his
yeah.
exact words but we went to the construction company and said, hey, can you help us develop a cash flow? And he did it based on the phasing. So
If that
his
would've-
phasing, I think, looked pretty level to him then.
If
Is
that
that-
was not the case, if that changed, would there be any impact, significant impact, if it was front-loaded or?
Well, yes, if we don't have the cash to pay the bills that they submit, but we should work along with the construction manager to know the cash flow and going into it, they're, I don't know, they're not necessarily part of the decision how we decide our cash flow, but when we say to them, hey, this is what we have, and we have to work on the schedule together, I guess.
So,
is
so
what
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
saying.
essentially the,
Ekman looked at your slide 6.
Ekman sent us a
Provided
cash
that.
flow projection, which we incorporated into slide 6.
Gotcha.
So essentially, they said, we can refine it when we have a better developed schedule and schedule of values. You have to understand, we don't yet have a GMP for this project. We're
right.
still in schematic design and design development to come.
Yeah.
So,
My only question is, if that changes, is there
Right.
an effect?
well, so there are bond anticipation note options. I mean, we have some ways to cover for that
Okay.
if we get to that point, but
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. We designed the plan of finance based on when you need the funds, based on the information that, we were given and Lisa and Meredith are working with. We think that this sort of, partial bonding approach, is a good way to go. If circumstances changes where interest rates are rising, or if the new project cash flow shows that accelerated payment, there are options. The bond bank issues twice a year, so you can go back to them in December of 17 or early January 18 to put on the additional, but there is interim financing as well, like a construction loan, to provide temporary financing before you bond it.
I don't want to beat it, but in our business, the construction schedules tend to be very front-loaded, because you're doing site work, you're doing all the roughs up front, and it's, the last half of the project is
Well, it's
less
interesting, because
expensive.
we went to them, and perhaps
Okay,
they
yep,
would have
yep.
maybe loaded
Okay.
60% of it up front, and they didn't do that.
Okay.
They chose to provide us with something that was
You
more
may
of a
just wanna-
straight line.
You may just want to,
Yeah,
Yeah.
revisit that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and there's certainly time. I don't think you have to make a decision to the bond bank until
well, mid-May.
mid-May. So maybe if you get another, we can certainly refresh the numbers and come up with another bond amount. But we were hesitant to recommend to the district to bond the full amount now with so much uncertainty. The danger being if you bond more than you actually need, you end up with money you have to pay back that you didn't need in the first place. And that's something we try to safeguard against. And there's certain federal IRS regulations that really, there's certain penalties in place that you want to avoid if you can.
Right.
So that's why the approach I'm going to talk about is sort of bonding a partial amount now and then revisiting the issue in the winter of 2017, early 2018 to see where the rest of the project goes.
Russ, did you have a question?
Yeah, a couple. I didn't know if you had looked at what the interest rate, the impact of an interest rate change, what the variability was by 100 basis points or 200 basis points, which is possible what you're talking about, and sort of what's the break-even versus borrowing the $35 million up front at a cheap lower rate. The other issue is what I heard, but can you box that interest rate risk to a future or a hedge if necessary?
it's just an uncertain time.
Yeah.
And I at least like everybody to know, it's gonna be a break even up to 150 basis points or 75 basis point move. If it moves more than that, it may be more economical to take out more money than we need up front than it would be on the interest rate.
And Bill, I'm sorry to cut you off. I think you're going to hit on some of these points, so why don't we let you finish your part, and then we'll...
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely, and I
take it
can
from there.
address
So I
some of
apologize
the
for that.
questions he asked. So on slide 7, based on the information we had on the construction timetable that showed a fairly even draw schedule, we would recommend that, again, providing 50% of the funding of the project in this round of financing with the New Hampshire Bond Bank, which will get you into the market at a very favorable time where interest rates are at these lows that I described previously. At that time, we would then, evaluate where the project is, where interest rates are in January of 18, where the bond bank typically does another issue round of financing 6 months after. So really, the interest rate risk we're talking about is the period of from June of this year to January of next year. I've seen interest rate rise quickly, but not, probably 50, 75 basis points in 6 months. I've never seen 100 or 200. It's possible. It could happen. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was around then too. So, there's a bunch of reasons why people, and we can get into the economic theory and demographics going on. There's a lot of reasons why the economy is not going to see wild swings in interest rates like we had before. Retail economy, as we know it, is changing dramatically. Retail stores are closing. People's consumption patterns are changing. Inflation that was rampant in the 80s, I don't know if we're ever going to see that again. I guess that would be good for some people, but I think there's certain things in place where I do recall, 2008 and 1997, or 1998, where there's dramatic market corrections. But I think, the risk from this June to next December, January, I think it's, maybe 50 basis points or 75 at the outset. Be honest with you. And in terms of what's available to the district, unfortunately, New Hampshire state law prohibits a lot of the tools you're talking about. They don't allow municipalities to enter into these contracts, so which may work in the corporate world, but for municipalities, they're largely not encouraged. So just continuing on, if in fact that we see that the project is accelerating, as Lisa had mentioned, we can do a short-term financing, which is those rates are at 1%, the less than a year. That's a very effective way to borrow money. Again, what I'm talking about with rates here is one of the reasons why they're so low is that tax-exempt rates, these bonds are tax-exempt. People don't pay income on the dividends, so that's why the rates are so low.
You said 1%. It's 1% additional.
Yeah. Well, no, it's
Just
just
pay the
1%.
interest
Yeah.
on
Just
the
if you do a
money.
note. Yeah, it's like a bridge loan.
You're
Yeah,
right,
it'd be
sure.
like a 1% loan.
You still have to pay the daily interest on it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And you would fold it into the next permanent
$2
financing.
million
so.
would be maybe like $7,000 or
Gotcha.
something.
Right.
Yep.
Like a fee.
And so, again, based on what's going on in the market, we really suggest that the district borrow as much as reasonably it can this cycle because of the market conditions. And you do, obviously have a plan and a need to spend the money. You're going to be spending some amount of money over the next year. So we would recommend that we think 20 million is a good number. If it's 25 or 18, that's something we could revisit with the construction manager based on the cash flow. But again, the ability to get back into the market if we see a change or in direction in terms of the construction cycle or interest rates, the bond market, because of its market access and its high rating, can get you back in the market very, very quickly. And I know they've done standalone issues as well, so you don't have to wait for their typical borrowing cycle. So if you do give them some notice, they will, in the past, work with you to do another bond issue just on your behalf, so you can get into the market. But in terms of where interest rates are going to go between now and say next December, they'll be higher. I would say, I'm not going to argue they're going to be higher. The second scenario that we ran, the interest rate on the back here, the first financing, we assumed a interest rate of 3.75 for the one in June for a 29 or 30-year bond, which again, we think is still conservative. Assuming we did another issue back in 2019, which payments would begin in fiscal 20, we assumed a 4.25 rate. So we built in a 50 basis point increase in that second round of financing. It could be higher.
Missing the header, I think. What is
Yeah,
that?
that's a 2019 borrow.
That's the 2019?
Yeah, that's a slide. I went right to 10 and 11, so I'm sorry. Just to give you a sort of an idea of what sort of interest rates we're assuming.
So 2017 I got.
Right. And then slide 11. Do you have slide 11?
I do. That's
Yeah.
19.
2019.
Gotcha.
Which could be earlier
Right.
if conditions prevail. But based on the cash flow, the first slug of money of $20 million will get you provide financing through March of 2019, at which time you could be in the market in 2018 if it looks like you need money quicker or if you see interest rates rising. But just based on the pure cash flow that I was looking at, 20 million gets you from now until March 19, and then the second balance, 19 million and change, will get you through that year through the end of the construction, which is February 2020. But it's a very fluid situation without having actual contracts in place and maximum guarantees. It's hard to pinpoint a financing plan, say this is what you want to do, because there could be undue delays. You could end up spending less money, than you actually bond, and then you're basically, and you might have you don't have the ability, say in the corporate world, where you can just pay bonds back and just pay extra. You can't do that in the municipal world. There's restrictions as far as when you could redeem bonds earlier before their maturity. It's typically the first 10 years you have to wait, and after 10 years you can start paying bonds back sooner.
And again, that's, in our case, that would be subject to the bond banks refinancing
Exactly.
when they call the bond.
Meredith, is there going to be any refinement of these numbers prior to actually going out and securing the bond in terms of things like cash flow? Or are we done?
Well, the building committee hasn't yet been finalized and met, so we'll be meeting to talk about the schematic design pieces. So I think we'll have some sense of flow and be getting closer to the numbers, but we aren't going to have a GMP before we go to the market. What Lisa has done a breakdown that we can get to after Bill finishes that looks at, here's what the total interest cost would be over different terms for the total cost, and that will just give you some sense. But I spoke with Preston a couple of times, Preston Hunter from Ekman, who did the cash flow projection. Obviously we have some site work pieces. Some of that isn't getting finalized until the second year because we've got only sort of a temporary road in at the elementary school, for example. A lot of our refurbishment, we're doing our major construction in that first year, but the refurbishment of the junior high is that entire second year. So I think he felt pretty good about it.
Probably the best he can do at this point.
At this point, I think that's about as good as we're going to get.
Good.
That doesn't mean that we may not, overestimate their expenditures as we make our own calculations.
That's my question. So the 20 million we think is a good number. So then I'm like 25. Why don't we do 25? And then we have that in case money.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a good idea to do?
So let's let Bill finish would be my suggestion, and then maybe when we look at this other piece, we can have some conversation about that.
Some of the last things I'm going to say. There are cases where we have worked with districts where they borrowed the full amount of money up front. This last year in 2016, Dover built a $75 million or $85 million regional, high school and vocational center. They were comfortable with assuming the risk. And they apparently had construction agreements in place with maximum numbers in place, so they knew what their exposure was. So they were fully prepared to borrow the full amount with a 2.5-year construction timetable. So it is possible if you have the confidence that you're going to be spending the money along the lines that your architect and your construction manager is saying. We're working currently with another community in Rhode Island. It's doing $75 million for elementary school and high school. they're doing $45 million this year, and then in 2 years planning to do the balance. Because the reality is, you can only it's difficult for a municipality or a school district to even manage projects to that scope. You don't generally have the staff unless you hire somebody to do that on your behalf. A private company typically would hire, a general contractor, or somebody who could actually be there full time, watching everything. So cities and towns are different. They don't necessarily have the resources, expertise, to actually be able to manage that type of expenditures all at once. And still, attest to their typical jobs that they have to do. But we're happy to refine the numbers even further once we get some more definite information from the construction manager. But we have had instances where districts have borrowed the full amount, but again, the circumstances were that they had solid numbers in hand, and they had guarantees or contracts in place that said that this money was going to be spent along these time frames.
But a guaranteed maximum price is just the maximum that might be spent.
Right.
They may have a GMP of 35 million, you say, and then, it would be nice if they came in at 31, but you won't know that. So
right.
We may be able to dial it in. Let me, this is new to us, so
sure.
Humor me for a second. We may be able to dial it in a little closer beyond 20 million. It's going to be more than 20 million towards the actual final amount. In theory, if we knew the final amount, let's say it was, let's put a number on it, let's say it's 35 or
A guesstimate.
a guesstimate,
Don't go with a number.
not quoting a number here, 35 million, and we knew that now, and we knew that the rates are what they are, and we expected them to go up. In theory, would we want to borrow it all?
Yeah,
now?
that's certainly a strong consideration. Yeah, if you had that confident level, that's something that you might want to take in consideration. Recognizing, though, there are some disadvantages with that, in the sense that if you're not spending the money, the IRS is not very fond of cities and borrowing the money and stashing it away and sitting on it indefinitely, unless you have to meet certain spending requirements in order to avoid, say, things called penalties and arbitrage. Arbitrage isn't really encouraged in the municipal world. The government, they generally don't like that. But yeah, if you had the confidence level that you're going to spend 35 million, say, within 3 years, you could make an argument to borrow the money now. Your interest rates are higher, knowing also that you'll have an immediate, budgetary impact in this budget, where you'll be paying, debt service, quicker and a larger amount sooner than you may have anticipated.
Especially, I suppose, where their sister agency cut us off, the USDA. But so it might make some sense under these rate conditions to try to get it as close as you could to.
Yeah, I would suggest that you, again, you're not knowing the characteristics of the project or the nature of the construction or the market conditions in this area, to work with your construction manager and try to get a number that folks feel confidently enough that you're going to be able to spend within the next even 24-month period.
What is the, just for my edification, what is the IRS concerned about? The districts making income off park money?
Yeah, so you're borrowing money, what they call tax exempt. Investors don't pay any interest on the income that they report to the IRS, but you're investing it at taxable rates. So you're borrowing at 3, and you could be investing it, depending on where you are, at a higher rate. And pre-86, that was allowed, but after 1986, the IRS, prohibited that practice. So the federal government sees this as a subsidy they're giving cities and towns by not taxing your debt, and it costs them money. So they're willing to allow you to have this subsidy, but not take advantage of it to, benefit yourself at their expense.
Does the board have any more questions for Bill at this point, before we get to Meredith and Lisa's part?
I just think, in closing, we're happy to run more scenarios. I know things are still very much in flux here, based on the information we were given. This is, one scenario. There certainly could be other ones, depending on different interest rate assumptions of that nature, but we're happy to provide that to you.
Yeah, wait, just out of slide 6, this is without soft costs. Why would we take that out?
It actually is just the construction, and it's without the architect costs. it's just construction.
Without
So-
service fees?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
well, okay, I see that. Why though?
It was just what was provided. It was just the construction at the time. That's what Bill had for the cash flow.
Right, and we know that there's funds being expended on engineers and things of that nature, so, yeah. And so, I mean, that's, you may want to add that as part of your first tranche of the borrowing. Say if it's $4 million, you might want to include that now.
You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're going to be,
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's being
It needs
funded
to
right
be
now.
overlaid into this,
Yeah.
but for
Right.
discussion purposes
We're
and
just
timing,
focusing on question.
this is what we had to go
Gotcha.
together.
This
We
is
had
based
just
on
the
the construction.
construction manager's input.
and
then we have to-
architectural is a percent of, so that should be
Yeah.
pretty
Thank you.
straightforward. Yeah,
Okay.
good point.
But-
Yeah.
Is it straight lined or not?
The architectural
The
should be,
architect's
right?
more upfront, and I figure for that, we'll have at least a $2 million bond anticipation note on top of the 20 million.
Okay.
That's what I figure, because we're gonna have to start paying that sooner than later.
Bill, just could you revisit, I know you had shared with us an analysis of our financials, sort of projecting that it did not make sense for us to go to market on our own, that the bond bank rating was higher
We
than
had
the
done some
community.
credit work based on some of the, actually the town's financials and the school districts as well. There's certain rating calculations that Standard & Poor's and Moody's Investors, those are the primary rating agencies, use. And based on our work, we saw that the district and this town would end up to be about a high single A rating, A+, or, which is a very good rating for a town I don't believe has any public debt or any history of debt. But with the fact that the bond bank is rated AA and AA+, you get the benefit of that higher rating. You get the benefit of their expertise and spreading the costs over a pool of issues as opposed to doing your own issue, which you're looking at. A rating fee could be $35,000. You'd have to do a disclosure document, which is called a prospectus, which is not an easy thing to put together if you've never had one done. You've got to go back about 5 or 10 years and compile financial information and tables. And then you have to agree to update that every year for investors for the life of the bond. So that's an exercise you have to do. You have to pay someone like myself to do as a financial advisor and go in the market and then wait to see what investors are willing to submit on your credit with very little credit history. But with the fact that the bond bank has market access, has the infrastructure in place to do this, and they do this all the time, and they have the higher ratings, frankly, really make it very, very beneficial. That's really what they were designed for, to help communities such as yourself.
Do you want to explain?
Well, so this chart that just provided actually is just showing you what the latest rates are from the bond bank. That on a level debt and level principal rating, these are current ratings as of March 24th from the bond bank. So previously we had a rating, interest rate, sorry, I should say, of 4.25 on level debt of 30. Now they've dropped to 3.75, but at the same time, the level debt, the 20% has gone up, and there's a bit of a difference between level debt 20 and level principal 20. So level debt is at 3.4, level principal for 20 is at 3.3. But this is just a high level, so you can see what the total interest would be. And as you see, level debt 25 is closing in on the level debt 30 with the same interest rate there. And over to the far right, I showed what the tax impact of those different borrowings would be. And the warrant article previously had a year one of $1.33. So across the board, there's an improvement there. So just wanted to.
I mean, if you look at the level, you can see the total cost and what you'd be paying in interest as well, broken out. And so, a consideration for the board, while, when we were talking back in December, we were talking about potentially level debt over 30 years. Then we had some questions about, was that the right thing because interest rates had gone up? Well, now they're back in range. But if you look at level debt for 25 years, you know, we'd be very close on the total cost of the project to what we had already projected to voters. So that's one of the things that you're going to want to consider as we move forward. You might want to issue that debt over a shorter time period because it's going to save you, you know, $5 million in interest over that time period. And again, if we structure that, so maybe you do 20, or maybe you do 25, or maybe you do 30 in our bond offering in June, July, because we think we have a reasonable assurance that we're going to have spent that out within 2 years, then you're issuing maybe that remaining 9 over. You can look at what the rates are and determine how you want to structure that timing as well.
I think it's good on this chart to see, in terms of the tax implications, especially with the 25 and the 30, you know, there's a difference, yes, with the shorter term, but it's not as great as it was before. And I think that's something to consider that we weren't really looking at. So thank you for mapping it out this way, Lisa.
How forecastable are these numbers?
Well, the bond bank has financial advisors, and that's where they get it from. And they do their best to be conservative. So hopefully, if their financial advisors are doing their best, they can come in at these rates or maybe even lower.
So do they do it the day we apply for the bond? Is that when they?
When they sell.
Yeah,
They
so
sell.
these
When they go
rates
out to the
change
market.
daily.
Yeah.
They fluctuate daily based on a number of factors. So you won't know your actual rate until they issue the bonds. They sell the bonds, I think, in July or June.
June,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
That's
that's
when the
when you
real
won't
rate-
know that rate until they actual, take the bids from investors, and that's when they'll know the final rate and terms.
So they try to forecast it.
No, it's just the case with anybody, even if a community's borrowing on their own. It's like a sealed bid process. You send out a notice to investors saying bids will be due at 11 o'clock on June 10th, and you just see what the rates are that day, and that's what you take. So and you really don't, you can get a good idea. There's indicators like I pointed to, some of those indexes I pointed to before. People use this as benchmarks to use, but you won't know until the bid is submitted and ultimately awarded by whoever issues the bonds.
And this interest rate is tax-free?
Yes.
Federal and state if we had.
Yeah, right. You don't have it here in New Hampshire, so but I guess there is a provision in New Hampshire where it's dividends tax, I believe, where some folks would have to report it there, but it would be tax-free. Yeah.
So these rates we're seeing are as of March 24th of 17.
It's the bond bank's projection for their
June
sale.
probably
June
was
sale at that date.
Yeah, there may have been improvement since March 24th.
That's when I got them.
Yeah.
Again, excuse my ignorance, but they're guessing, correct?
Estimating, yep.
Yeah.
Guess.
Because
They might be insulted by that. No, I
No,
don't know.
I
guess.
I-
With
I-
all
I-
their advice and their
trying to
information, it's
get-
still a forecast. Well,
Yeah, but I guess what I'm
guess
saying, they
with-
changed a lot
it's
since
an
October
informed
till now.
forecast.
We might not be too surprised if they were changed a lot again.
Yeah, I think and then, there's a lot of other reasons. The reason why rates went up so much after the election, where people were anticipating a change in federal policy that would, help equities in corporate companies, and it turns out some of those policies might not be in place. So you're seeing a lot of people reevaluate that. Where now, even in June, the Fed was scheduled to raise its interest rates again in June, but that probability is now down less than 50% according to the latest survey of economists.
Mhm.
So there is a less of a, there might be another interest rate increase in September. The Fed is also going to be deleveraging its balance sheet, where, remember, it bought up all those securities. They're going to put those back in the market. That might, cause some interest rate increases. But I don't think you're going to see drastic spikes like we saw upwards, unless something else happens with the, domestic agenda.
So it seems like we now know where we must borrow the money. We don't have the USDA option, and we don't realistically have the selling it ourselves option. So it seems the question is, when can you lock in terms of this process, in terms of the duration of the bond, 25, 30, you know?
Yeah, I think you were doing, the application has to be in place to the bond bank by middle of May, and they issue their bonds in June.
The way that I see it, and I might, correct me if I'm wrong about this, is that we're looking at the amount that we want to borrow up front is the first question, and then in terms of what we're going to do it. And then the rate will then determine what.
Yeah,
that
and
amount is.
the other feature is how you choose to pay the bonds back. There's two, and I know you're familiar with this, two level debt service or level principal. Level principal pays the debt off quicker, and because of the fact that you're paying it off quicker actually lowers your interest expense. You know, you pay a little bit, you start with higher payments and go down. It's a different, that's frankly what I recommend to a lot of my clients is to pay the debt off as fast as you can. Just because, you know, it's just less expensive and you're building in budget capacity in future budgets. So.
I think we have to think in that in terms of the tax ramifications,
Right.
implications for the townspeople.
Good point, yeah, that is, because you do pay a higher amount up front, and then there is an immediate tax impact as opposed to level debt service where that impact is equalized a little bit smoother over the life of the issue.
So, you know, given the volatile market, and, you know, all the estimating that needs to be done, guesses, forecasts, bond counsel, they send their preliminary opinions to the rating agencies and the bond bank May 8th. The calls with the rating agencies are the 8th through the 12th, so that's when they're out there.
What does that mean? Can you explain what that means?
I don't know in the technical bond world, but I believe it's when they're going out to the market with the rate.
So the schedule had so the bond bank will be seeking a rating on its bonds
Yeah.
in May.
The 8th through the 12th.
Yeah, so typically they have a conference call with the bond insurer. It's probably Moody's, Fitch, and S&P. I assume that's who they're using. That process, they just look at the bond bank and look at its financial condition and its security for the bonds, and then probably in about 2 or 3 weeks after that, they'll release a rating. And then after that, the bond bank will issue its own prospectus to investors, and I guess assume a bond sale in middle of July is what they're shooting for.
Yep. Yes, so the sale is June 6th, actually.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's even quicker, yeah.
But prior to that, so the governing board, which is you all, would have your certificate of vote regarding the approval of the loan agreement, so May 19th. So that's,
Yeah,
you
but
have
the
a
rate-
meeting on that Thursday.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
rate
for
will
the
be,
first-
the rate will be finalized this June 6th on that sale date.
So
And then the
May
loan agreements
19th
go back to them
That's it.
for the
Our
22nd,
drop
right, so
dead
that's
date
it.
for this sale.
It's not established till it's sold.
Correct.
Right, and the sale is June 6th, and then June 23rd, the bonds are returned to our council, pre-closing, and
Funds in July.
the funds are wired to us July 13th.
Okay.
So that's when we'll have the money.
Yeah.
Bill, thank you for this presentation. You've given us a lot of food for thought, and thank you for the work that you've done with Meredith and Lisa thus far.
And again, we'll be continuing to work with Meredith and Lisa going forward between now and May. We're familiar with the bond bank officials too as well, so we communicate with them all the time in terms of what their thought process is and timing.
It's very helpful.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Lisa, do you want to proceed with your report, your quarterly report?
Sure. Pass that down.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You did?
No, I haven't.
So as I've been doing, I've been providing a quarterly report by function, high level, where the actuals are and where I think we're going to end the year. And I thought we'd be slightly in a deficit last quarter, but also knowing that I didn't have a lot of insight into how some of the departments were going to spend their supply lines and different things like that. So I got better perspective on some of these numbers, but I think we'll be more or less break even to the extent that things have gotten better in the area of winter's over, so now I know how much we've spent pretty much on heating repairs, so that's a more stable number. So it looks as though I had a slight improvement in the maintenance area for that. The same thing We have not filled the position of the facilities director, so so we'll have some savings in that area. There have been a number of changes in special ed for tuition. There's been some pluses and minuses, so I've incorporated that. The big area that still remains, I have to see the regular ed spending. There are a number of lines conservatively that haven't been spent for some of the replacement equipment, replacement furniture, and we're going to look to see what was the plan for that, because I think there might have been a thought that once this bond got approved, people put a hold on all their buying of their replacement furniture and things, but those things can still be replaced and brought into
the new facility.
Or along
the
with.
updated
or
facility.
along with, yes. So conservatively, we had improvements in the tech area because of our E-rate. We've gotten some money back there as well. And
Because of your E-rate?
Oh, E-rate. So what libraries, schools can get reimbursement from the government for what they spend on certain technology things for phones, software payments, and then that is supposed to go back into your technology to improve it, really.
So is that a grant situation, or does
No, it's a government.
Federal reimbursement?
Yeah, but it's, we have to apply to the government, and there's a whole process of forms and phasing and reporting out of expenses. So once we complete that, we get reimbursements for that. And that really just comes in as a credit to those accounts, because the idea is to improve, to bring it in and spend it towards improvements. And with the other areas have pretty much held steady of what I had for the last time, the last quarter. So those were really the changes that made it a little better, so. Revenues are also doing well. I didn't have a chart here, but we're exceeding revenues by about $50,000 on the base Medicaid and CAD aid reimbursements, not counting the money that came in for the fire and life safety state aid. So not counting that. 500,000, and the plan will be for that. I hope to bring a proposal to hold back a percent when we look at the year-end fund balance, the 2.5% of the appropriations of the prior year we can hold back, because the taxpayers voted for that. So we'll talk about that more down the road, but I'm not building that into the revenues. I'm just looking at the base revenues. So we're in a good position. Doesn't include the underground tank. We still have that open
That's
issue
a couple $100,000.
to see how much it really is. I know the design was done and submitted to the state, but we're waiting to hear on that, so.
Well, that's good news.
Somewhat. I'm hoping with all the conservative places that across every single account before you're done,
Way to do it,
that we
yeah.
can find the funds within. It would be nice to not have to touch our reserves, so.
Lisa, I'm sorry, you've probably done this before, it's my fault, but can we go through these columns? It says the first column's original.
So the original budget is what was voted, and the major difference between the original and the current total budget, if you look at, on the second page, 2,900 benefits, all the benefits were budgeted in that one category, and they've since been prorated back where they belong to each account.
And that's essentially because when we report to the state every year, we have to report them in these specific categories.
Mhm.
So while it was.
So why not track them there?
Yeah, it was easy to explain them maybe in one line, but it made it a reporting nightmare for folks in our business office. So we
This will be the
distributed them
last year
back
we
out.
have to look at
Correct.
this. Yeah. It is confusing. Right.
And then the fiscal activity,
And
meaning.
the fiscal activity is what has been spent to date, okay? And I apologize, I didn't update my header. it is actually not through December, it's through the end of March. I should just reissue this for the record and have it through March. And so the fiscal activities through March, we've spent 11.4 million. Encumbrances of 4 million. That's the to-go piece, known purchase orders, known encumbrances for salaries, and it doesn't include encumbrances for benefits. Those are not in here. And we're working on the financial system to be able to have those in there in the future. But it has to do with how the budget was originally set by individual and each position and each person. So we're looking to maybe utilize the system better to get those encumbrances in. And then the balance is what remains. So a lot of that remaining balance is going to have to be used to cover retirement payouts and benefits.
And that special ed transportation.
Yep. Oh, and actually, so special ed transportation, I was a little alarmed, but there was a problem with the encumbrances in the system. So I reported it like it is, right out of the system, but we are going to come in on track because there's a duplicated purchase order in there. What happened in the system, we reduced an order, and it actually said, this is how much is left to be spent, and it doubled it.
Okay.
So that number's gonna change.
Yeah, and I didn't want to misrepresent what was in the system. I just printed it the way, so it matches my financial report out of the system, but I projected it to be fine, because it will be.
Now,
That's a great question. I should have pointed that out.
What about the 2,800, the other, is that?
Okay, that has to do with, in my little notes at the bottom, 2,800 bus monitor hours, 2,800, I'm going to have to do a transfer to bring fine expenses in another function. And then the other area, I thought you were, technology, 2230, a significant deficit had to do with the video equipment. So
The board authorized expenditures of in the last year.
So
for this
special
fiscal
ed
year, but it wasn't
deficit,
budgeted.
tuition mostly, nurse change in election benefits, same, and just going through, you can see what's footnoted on the back. The reasons for the plus and minus.
Yeah, most of these are not.
I love this report.
Yeah,
This
most of
is
these are
like-
not significantly different from the last quarter, with the exception of we've been able to update the heating projections for the repair and maintenance lines.
So that's what it's just we
Thank you.
improved in a few areas and they're incorporated in here. So we'll break even or better,
Good.
so.
Thank you, Lisa, for this report again. One of the things as we move forward that I forgot to say at the beginning is you all noticed that there's a modification to the way the agenda is tonight as opposed to the way it's been in recent past. And this is just a template for us to try to use and see how it works and how it flows for us. If you guys have any feedback on the new agenda, let me know, and Meredith and I can help.
Yeah, I will say one of the
Update
things
it.
we discussed as sort of the rationale for making these changes was to be able to call attention to those action items so that it's clear to members of the public, members of the community, what votes the board, what actions the board will be taking at a particular meeting.
To that end, the next thing is committee reports. Under that would fall the building committee, communication and shared services. Mike, do you have any update from the building committee side that is not, aside from the stuff we're gonna talk about in a minute?
I have nothing.
Okay, meeting's May 3rd, 6:30, is that right?
Is it, we have a time now?
Or did I make that up?
I have
I saw a
place
time.
held 6:30 in my own mind, but we have
Okay.
not yet discussed that.
So there'll be a
together.
meeting of said committee.
Time to be determined.
At a later, on May 3rd at a different time. Anything in shared services that Meredith hit upon the facilities manager? That seems to be about all that, and there's nothing from the communication side. We're looking at a policy, the policy DDAA, post-issuance tax compliance policy. Is this our first reading of this, Meredith?
It is, and as you might expect from reading the title, and if you have had the opportunity to read through the language, this is a policy that has come to us courtesy of our bond counsel. It's strongly recommended that the board have such a policy in place that helps us deal with those things that Bill was just pointing out with respect to arbitrage, managing the project funds, complying with all of the bond requirements as we move forward. So it's for you for first read, but
That makes sense now. When I first read it, I'm like, what? What is this?
it is a long, lengthy
It's a long policy.
Now it makes sense.
document.
So we will take this, accept it as our first reading this time.
You don't need to take any action. It just remains on the table, and then any feedback would be submitted to you as policy chair or to me, and we can make any changes or updates or provide any clarifications at the next meeting.
Yep. If you have any questions, let us know. Moving along to our action items. The first is the approval of the charge for the building committee, which we sort of talked about at the last meeting. Marked out some stuff based on some recommendations that Mike had. Has everyone had a chance to review it? Are there any more questions on that? We had contemplated increasing, and Mike, you can hit on this too, increasing the number of members of the public from 6 to 8, and with a resounding level of support from people who've been on the facilities committee who want to remain on the building committee, I think, and there are 6 people that want to do that. I think it might make sense to amend that back to 6 and have the people that started us through this process continue and see it on through to the end. So that would be the recommendation that I would have.
God bless them.
Yes, thank you very much for the work that's been done and the work that is going to be done in the coming months, so we get this whole thing done.
Maybe a meeting contract.
So, any questions about this? Are we feeling good about proceeding? If so, I will accept a motion to accept this charge for the building committee.
As amended?
As amended.
So moved.
I'll second that.
On a motion from Mr. Zink and a second from Ms. McKenney, to approve the Newmarket School Building Committee charge as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you to the community service community members for their willingness to participate on this committee, and we will announce them in a second.
That's right.
The next thing is to appoint 2 school board members to.
The next one is to appoint building committee members.
The next one is to appoint building committee members, and we will announce those names. Those members that were on the facilities committee who want to maintain and be a part of the building committee are Skip Manso, Elena Lyon, Russ Simon, Ann Ellis, Eric Boderman, and Mark Fillion.
Wow.
Perfect.
Excellent team of a variety of levels of expertise, and I think they will serve as well on the building committee as they did on the facilities committee, and I'm glad that they're all willing to step up again. If you approve these individuals and their appointment therein, I request a motion to do so.
So moved.
Second.
On a motion from Ms. McKinney and a second from Mr. Kennison, we vote to approve these 6 nominated people to serve on the building committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you for serving. Now,
There's that one guy that we might want to question.
Mike?
moving along, as a part of this whole process, and given the scope of work that's going to be embarked upon and continued from the facilities committee, and we can talk about this further, I think that it might be a good policy for us to have one school board member who is the chair of the building committee, and then a second person who is sort of an alternate, who attends the meetings, who would lead the meetings in the absence of the chair. What do you guys think about that?
I think it makes sense.
You know, I think that with a situation like this, where things are going to be moving weekly, daily, it's important for us to have 2 people there so that the second person can step up if there's a necessity to do so. So I think it makes sense to have 2 people on this committee as opposed to the other ones where we might only have 1.
Just as an editorial comment, I think after our interviews with the facilities director candidates this week, I feel a whole lot more comfortable that those individuals that we're considering are going to play a very, very important and good role. So I feel it's less important than it was before I interviewed these folks, because they bring to the table all kinds of expertise. I mean, I think it's fine we do it, but I brought it up last time that I question it, and I don't any longer.
So one option I would just point out that's available to the board is that the vice chair's role in the absence of a chair is to step in and fill that role. So you could appoint an alternate, or you could leave it that in the absence of a committee chair that the vice chair would step in to fulfill that role.
And I think that it would be good to have that at the beginning till that person gets up and running when he or she comes on board, so that we have that in place. So,
Can always amend.
yes, we can always amend. And we can all, it might be something that's required in the short term when the heavy stuff is happening. We'll just see. And Mike, it's a good point. We can amend at any point. Who would be willing to serve as the chair of said building committee? Mike Kennison. Thank you. And who will serve as the vice chair of said committee?
I will.
Al Zink. So, I seek a motion to appoint Mike Kennison as the chair, as the school board representative chair of the building committee, and Al Zink as the vice chair of the building committee.
Are you looking for a motion?
I seek a motion.
Not all at once here.
I know, I'm
Jeez.
sorry. I kind of lost it for a minute, but so moved.
Second.
And a motion from Ms. McKinney and a second from Ms. Alberg to nominate Mike Kennison as the chair of the building committee and Al Zink as the vice chair / alternate. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? It's unanimous. Mike, I have said it to you before, but I'm going to say it again. Thank you for helping us get to this point. Thank you for your willingness to serve again and help us see this through to the end. You have worked countless hours, a lot more than a lot of folks, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Kim.
Sincerely. And Al, thank you for your willingness to help in this way too. Your special expertise in the building realm will be invaluable to the committee, so thank you for doing it.
We've got some
We've
good
got,
building expertise
it's
out
an
there.
excellent team, and I think as we've said before, it's a very high functioning team, very committed team, and I expect to see that to continue. So thank you both for doing it as well. Anything else about that? The next thing is approval of the minutes. Are there?
C.
Oh my gosh, I can't see. Okay, we're at C.
You want my glasses?
I need to bring my own. I really do, but I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready.
This is a
Okay.
I've
headband.
surrendered.
I need to really surrender because I cannot
I'm
see
addicted.
things in front of me. Okay, the next thing is, as we know as the board, the manifest process, which is the documentation that we must sign each week so checks can be issued by the district, has to be signed by school board members to be approved for the checks to be cut. In the past, that has been part of our, on the process of our meetings so that we could sign the manifest in line with what our meetings were. We know for the past 6 months, the dates have been sort of off, and we've been a week prior to the meetings that the manifest has been done. It's come to my attention that in our policy, it states that there's a requirement that 2 school board members sign the manifest each time. All of us will receive an email copy, as we have been, of the documents and for our review, and then we need 2 people to come in on a weekly basis to sign those manifests, and then we'll sign it at the meeting the next time to make sure that the checks are not cut. Are there any members of the 2 members of the board that would be willing to do that on a consistent basis? Mike and Ingrid, thank you very much. I seek a motion to appoint Mike Kennison, Ingrid Alberg as the 2 school board members to the manifest committee.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Ms. McKinney, a second from Mr. Zink. To appoint Mr. Kennison and Ms. Alberg as the 2 school board members to the manifest committee. All those in favor, please say aye.
I think that's a really good idea.
It's a great idea, and I think that, the good thing is we'll all have the ability to look at the electronic copy and ask any questions, but we'll have the consistent people going in. It gets difficult with people's schedules to make it in, so this works
Yeah.
perfectly. So thank you both for your willingness to serve in that way. Now, my eyes say D, approval of minutes. Are there any amendments to the meetings, the minutes of the April 6th public and non-public meetings that we had?
None. Here.
I don't see him.
With that being said, I seek a motion to approve the minutes, public and non-public, from the April 6th, 2017 meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Motion from Mr. Zink, a second from Ms. Alberg, to approve the minutes, non-public and public, of the April 6th meetings.
Who gave this to me?
You're lucky. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
You're responsible.
Let's take that vote again. On a motion from
Mr. Zink.
Mr. Zink, a second from Mr. McKenney, to approve the April 6th public and non-public minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Jen? Approval of the manifests. Ingrid, you have the manifests?
She's not familiar with the task, so perhaps
Al, you
someone
might want to
can.
help her.
I make a motion to approve the payroll and AP manifest for 2017. Payroll manifest in the amount of $979.80. AP manifest $509,775.90 for a total of $759,755.70.
Second.
On a motion from Mr. Zink and a second from Mr. Kennison, we seek a vote to approve the manifests of April 21st.
Boy, you are holding that kind of far away, aren't
It's
you?
a problem. Thank you, Al, for noticing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. On a motion for Mr. Zink and a second for Mr. Kennison, I seek a vote to approve the manifests.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? It's unanimous. Meredith, we need to go to non-public, correct?
Correct.
Then I seek a motion to adjourn the public meeting.
So moved.
You don't need that. You technically just need your motion to enter the non-public.
Then I'll take seek a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91-A:3, 2A through E.
So 2B.
2B.
And can't even see that either. And C.
So we'll go into, I seek a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A:3, 2, and 3.
So moved.
Second.
In a roll call vote, Mr. Zink.
Aye.
Ms. Alberg.
Aye.
Mr. Kennison.
Aye.
Miss McKenney.
Yeah. Aye.
Aye for me. Okay.
Do you
Goodness.
want to make sure
Yes,
you're
we are still on.
off camera? And then we will.
Al, will you call the, Mike, you're doing it.